Hi everyone, this is Chris Green, the History Chap, and welcome to this week's little highlights from British history, week commencing the 10th of January. But before I kick off, I just wanted to say welcome to Sally, Byron and Liz, three of our newest subscribers, and also a massive thanks to all of you who have participated in the survey. I think over 60 people have participated in my survey last week. If you still want to participate, there's a link at the bottom of the email, okay? But thank you to Robert for all your support, Ivan in Northampton, the American contingent, Miriam, Anne, Anita, Todd, Annie in Canada, Craig in Scotland, Kath in Cheshire, just up the road, Val in Sussex, Archie in London. There's so many of you. Thank you for all your kind words of support. Thank you for all your interesting topics you'd like me to talk about in the future and why you think history is important for people, why you enjoy learning history. I've got loads of stuff there and I will share some of that with you in the email this Friday, okay, so you get a feel for how it's shaping my thoughts for the coming year. And there's some really exciting stuff, so really looking forward to that. But anyway, let's crack on with the events that happened, or some of the events that happened in British history this week, week commencing the 10th of January. So let's start on the 10th of January, 1840. The penny post is launched. This is one for all of you former stamp collectors, or maybe some of your current stamp collectors out there. The penny black. If you remember that, that was the world's first stamp. The penny post was formed in 1840 by a man called Sir Rowland Hill. Prior to that, postage had been a real hit and miss affair across Britain. It could take forever, a bit like nowadays really. Could take forever, and very often the receiver had to pay for the postage. So if you got a birthday card sent to you, you had to pay for the privilege. And the prices were all over the show, and Rowland Hill brought in a uniform postal service in Britain. First in the world, next day delivery for a penny anywhere in England, and that's where the first stamp was introduced. And the other thing was the person who was sending the letter had to pay, and they paid a penny, and they put a stamp on the envelope to show that they had paid, and that first stamp was the penny black. And the postal service has grown since then. Speaking of birthdays, the 12th of January 1895, the National Trust is founded. Victorian social reformer Octavia Hill passionately believed that the working class people should have access to fresh air and the countryside. And this passion that was held by her was also held by a man called Sir Robert Hunter and a clergyman, Canon Hardwicke Rawnsley. And the three of them came together in 1895 to form the National Trust. Within weeks of the foundation, the trust was given 5 acres of cliff tops near Barmouth in West Wales. And a year later, they bought their first historic property, Alfriston Clergy House in Sussex, for £10, still looked after by the National Trust to this day. Interestingly, with the help of the children's author Beatrix Potter, the Trust then bought the Monk Coniston Estate in the Lake District in the northwest of England. Today, the National Trust has 5.6 million members. It's the largest voluntary organisation in Britain by a country mile, way ahead of political parties and other things. It looks after 250,000 acres of farmland, 780 miles of coastline, and over 500 historic properties. In fact, they are the second biggest landowner in England. So I'd love to know, what's your favourite property? National Trust property or National Trust place of beauty? Ping an answer to me. I'd really like to know. 15th of January, 1559. Queen Elizabeth I is crowned. Elizabeth I was the daughter of Henry VIII and his second wife, Anne Boleyn. And Elizabeth ascended the throne upon the death of her half-sister, Mary Tudor, the previous November. Queen kissed the Bible and held it to her heart, this English Bible, and massive cheers erupted from the crowd. It's amazing how symbolic coronations were and still are. And the final pageant in her procession was in Fleet Street, where it featured the Queen as the Old Testament prophet Deborah, who went on to rule. Deborah in the Old Testament ruled Israel for 40 years. And interestingly, Elizabeth went on to rule England for 44 years. And to say, I find it fascinating, the stories behind the coronations And we haven't had a coronation for, well, nearly 70 years now in England. I guess there's going to be one coming up in the not too distant future, in the next 10 years or so, I guess. But I'm fascinated, and maybe I'll do a talk about the coronations and some of the symbolism behind it, but also some of the mad stories. Those of you who've watched my talk about George IV, George IV actually barred his own wife from entering the service, and he had bouncers on the doors. We're not talking like yeomen of the guard. We actually had bouncers. He had prize fighters as bouncers on the door at Westminster Abbey, of all places. Absolutely shocking behaviour. But so the stories of coronations might be really fun to do at some stage in the future. The final one for this week is also on the 15th of January, but it's the 15th of January 1759. The British Museum opened. An Act of Parliament in 1753, 6 years before, created the world's first free national public museum. The British Museum, well, pre-COVID, was welcoming over 6 million visitors a year. So there you go, a few little things to celebrate this week, 10th of January, kicking off the new year. Hope you found those useful, interesting, nice little snippets that you can throw into conversations, impress everyone else with, impress your friends with, and I will see you very, very soon. In the meantime, take care, have a brilliant week.